Hey, this is AEE bringing you the latest episode of The Accelerator. Make sure to subscribe and stay tuned for the latest in education news.
Well, welcome to another episode of our podcast, The Accelerator. It's a privilege to have you join us, and to everybody listening and watching what we're doing. Welcome. In our studio today, we have our guest. His name is Dr. Bill Price. Dr. Price is an executive coach who specializes in the area of neuroscience as it applies to modern day life. So good to have you, Dr. Bill, and tell us a little bit more about
Sure, Graham. Thank you very much.
what you're up to.
Yeah. So I sometimes feel I'm not up to much, but I'm also feeling that I'm up to too much at times. So I'm living in this ambivalent space. I started off in the world of psychology,
Right.
in the world of teaching. So I was a lecturer at the government mining colleges. And then from there moved into relational psychology, and then into counseling psychology, a little bit of pastoral psychology, hated that. And then moved into business relation psychology, otherwise known as industrial psychology.
Right.
So, and that's where I was introduced to the science of the brain. And the first thing that struck me was someone just mentioned, he said, our brain goes to work, our brain goes to church, our brain
Goes to school.
goes to school, our brain is in our marriage, our brain is with our children. So that really captivated me and brought me to a space in my own life where I went, so let me understand a little bit more about the brain, and then I found out that the brain doesn't do anything. You don't think with the brain, you don't feel with the brain, you've got no emotions in the brain. The brain is simply a piece of hardware. So it's like the hardware of a computer that allows the DOS program, which is the little ones and little zeros, to flow. And so the brain allows our God-given, inbreathed aliveness, soulfully alive, conscious intelligence, and everything else that we were gifted with, our gifts, our fruits, in a holistic way, helps to make space for this orchestration that takes place. Recently, I've furthered my studies in neuroplasticity, which is like a double take on neuroscience.
Right.
So neuroscience can be seen as an umbrella. Then under that, you've got neuroeducation, neuropsychology, neurochemistry, neurobiology, neuro, as they go. But the layer between the two is neuroplasticity. Now, neuroplasticity is how our 87 billion neurons throw a party and have intelligence within themselves to decide who's coming to the party, who's going to think, who's going to feel, who's going to create energy, who's going to be stressed, who's not going to be stressed. And then there are like tentacles at the end. It's like a tree trunk with the roots. And the root system, there's about 78 trillion roots that are in the human brain.
Right.
It takes up 20% of the energy of our body, so it needs to be hydrated, and it is where everything happens. So our understanding, our consciousness, you can never ever have an out-of-body experience, because when you come back, you're going to come back into the body, and then interestingly, the brain reminds you, going, "That's where you were. That's
Welcome
where
back."
Welcome back." And this is what you saw, and that's what you saw. So even if we go in a trance, like was expressed a few times in the Bible, where Paul went to the third heaven and John had a vision, that's a neurological reality that goes. So you come back to that. How does the brain remember all of that? So it's a world that fascinates me absolutely. And I am working with an international group on the neuroplasticity of leadership and corporate world, and in education, which is my passion. Right. I'm busy with a project called Future Focused Minds Africa, where my legacy will be to help principals and teachers and parents and students to better understand who they are with regards to the way that they think and how they think, and that they can manipulate, they can change their mind, they can cognitively transform your mind, as Scripture declares. So,
Well, it's a lot to absorb, and I think for the average layman out there, when you talk about neuroplasticity and neuroscience and everything, the brain goes on tilt.
yeah,
But it's a lot simpler than it's made out to be when you get to understand the facts. Now, I got a very interesting magazine that somebody passed on to me called Acumen, and one of the articles in here speaks about leadership in a VUCA world.
yeah,
And they're referring to VUCA as volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous.
wow,
And when we think about our world today, and we think about schools, we think about teachers, parents, school management, this is the same world that they're having to navigate. It was so good to have you provide us with some questionnaires that we circulated to all our delegates at our recent Christian Educators Convention that happened earlier this year.
Thank you for that opportunity. It was amazing.
It was great. It was interesting to see how people responded, because I think there's so much confusion that's going on out in the world because of this VUCA reality that we're facing. And we've been able to, you've been able to have that data compiled and put together in a report, and the responses are just so fascinating as to what teachers, principals, even pastors think the future is going to be needing in order for us to survive. So when I look at that, I think the schools of today have got to change from providing a qualification at the end of grade 12 to creating a situation or an environment where students can be prepared for the future and the jobs that really don't even exist at the moment. So tell us a little bit more about perhaps some practical ways that we can interact with that research that's been done, but at the same time move in the right direction to prepare the next generation.
So what's very interesting about that, and first of all, thank you for the opportunity as the CEO of AAE schools in Africa, that I was given and afforded the opportunity. I really experienced that as a very humble moment in my life, that you allowed that to happen. Research is very important to me as a person, and it's like if we don't diagnose and we prescribe immediately, then it's malpractice. So if you go to a doctor and he fails to diagnose but comes straight on with a prescription going, sit down, I've got a prescription for you, you need to know that's malpractice. So that's it can be reported. So the reality is the questionnaire was designed in such a way on how the neuroplasticity works. So how the consciousness in our brain works is it thinks, it creates a thought, then it creates energy, and there's 7 energies, then it creates an emotion, then it decides what the action is going to be. We work together with that in terms of a will and self-control, which is part of our makeup. And then that action goes into the world, and of course it's going to have impact, and therefore consequences are going to come back. And then the loop starts. Am I going to make excuses for what happened? I'm going to show up with reality. Am I going to be courageous with what's happening? I'm going to throw in the towel. So the reality of VUCA is simply it's a drama of a dance of stuff that's happening in the world. So it's a dance of world economy. It's a dance of political reasoning and decisions. It's a dance of philosophies of government. It's a dance of the philosophy of education. What does our country believe about education? We're living in a country that is a communist-led country. They're Marxist, and so therefore God doesn't feature, and so therefore the whole system opens up to anything goes, and we see that in the way that education is swaying now and saying, no, we will now teach our children about sexuality. They want to take responsibility away from our parents because they're not doing a good job, because they're scared that the parents are going, no, we actually want to train our children based on the way in which God wants them to go,
yes,
and has created them to go. And we do want to build in values, and we do want to build in belief systems, and we do want to build in ethics and dignity, and we're answerable to God. We're not answerable to a government. And so the questionnaire went in and asked questions. So we asked questions on the basis of they're going to give us a qualitative reply. So that means in a sentence with words. But our instruments that we use are instruments that unpack words in terms of meaning and unpack a word in terms of its emotional content.
Okay.
The brain doesn't create a word without meaning, and doesn't create a word without energy, and doesn't create a word without emotion. So we're both quite passionate about what we're talking about, because we both love education and have been called by God into education. So that flips the switch for me, that I'm not just a teacher by trade, but I see it as a calling. I've got the smile of God on my life around that. And that's what every principal and teacher needs to have. But we do have a VUCA world, so it is extremely volatile. Whatever's happening in the Middle East and what's ever happening in Russia and between Russia and whoever, and things evolve overnight. I mean, I can remember watching TV when we were on holiday a few months ago, and the war in Israel, how it erupted from 70 people coming into a country to, okay, now we're going in, and now we're going to obliterate an area, and now we're going to take out the entire whoever and whatever, and the world implications. So the world plays a role. And inside of all of this is our education and our schools. So they are influenced and very powerfully try to be dominated or manipulated in many cases by the government, how they want you to think as Christians. And they'll play games of quality education, and you must have this kind of thing for a degree, and you must have done that for a degree. But they forget to tell us that at university, when the degree was designed, it was designed 5 years ago, and then it was agreed only 5 years after it was designed. So time has moved on 5 to 7 years down the line, and we're bringing relevance. I'm going, does your mother know that you're thinking like that? And so the VUCA world is indeed volatile. It means it's not, there's a lack of equilibrium. There's a storm. It's a storm. And then uncertainty is, we're not too sure what the end result is going to be. We look at what's happening in wars around us, and the predictability goes away. And in essence, we as leaders love predictability because it gives us a sense of confidence and a sense of, okay, we know where we're going. But even when we know where we're going, it's like we've got to add the rider. We're not 100% sure. So it's like a Jonathan telling his armor bearer, we're going to go and take the troop up on the hill. And Jonathan says, did you hear from God? And then the armor bearer asks Jonathan, and Jonathan answers, and he says, maybe the Lord will be with us. And so they go and they take on an entire troop, and they win. And so there's a lot of...
The armor bearer says, thank goodness.
The armor bearer is going, help me, Jesus, where am I going in this? And I've got to follow a leader who says, maybe. Oh, my word. I thought leadership was characterized by concise and by clarity and by focus. But the leadership that needs to show up in this volatile, uncertain, chaotic, ambiguous world definitely has to have a few components. So internally, a leader needs to give themselves permission to be, first of all, aware. That's how we're going to counteract the process. You've got to become aware. You've got to open up your eyes, and you've got to see things as they are, and understand at the same time that to your right, upper right, is a vision that I'm believing in, that my school needs to achieve.
Right.
So I'm comparing reality with a vision all the time. And if I'm a conscientious leader and I'm courageous, I give myself courage to say, I'm going to change reality.
Right.
I'm going to change the future thought that I want to follow.
Changing what's happening in the future so that the reality of the future
exactly
can be something different.
So the future doesn't come rolling out to me. I create my future. But
Right.
the realities of the environment, the VUCA, the clouds, the storm, it's how I set my sail
Right.
to go. I'm going into that destination, but sometimes I'm going to have to tack the ship to go first left, then right, then left, then right, go back, come back, stop, put down an anchor. But the reality of where we go as leaders is not the destination. The reality where we go as leaders is the journey itself, and how I engage with that, and how I work with my team.
Yeah, I'm interested in this, in the comment you made earlier, or the statement you made earlier, that prescription without diagnosis is malpractice.
Yeah.
And when we look at the education, particularly here in South Africa at the moment, is that you are prescribing a curriculum without diagnosing where the student is.
Yeah.
So we're coming with the assumption that every student is at the same point when we go into grade 1 or grade R now, following the latest legislation. So when they start out, and it's like a preschool 100-meter race, which is always fun to watch, is that everybody starts off together, and you get that one little kid he's head and shoulders above everybody else, and then you get the crowd, and then you get the straggler.
Yeah.
But when they get to the end of that race, everybody's cheering on, even the guy who comes in last.
Yeah.
The challenge we're facing in South Africa today is that we're assuming everybody is going to cross the line virtually at the same time, which is never going to happen,
that's
because of the language differences, the cultural differences, the socioeconomic,
intellectual differences.
Yeah. And so it's no surprise to us that 82% of children in grade 4 cannot read with meaning or comprehension in any language.
Wow.
That's the statistic that doesn't come from AEE, it comes from the Pearls report. And the challenge there is you've now got a child who's run 4 years and hasn't got any benefit. And how do we even begin to extract the potential from somebody whose self-esteem is so low? We're actually doing our next generation a disservice by continuing to press forward with the education system we have at the moment.
Yeah. So the bravery and the courage of a principal would take, first of all, they would diagnose all the pupils that are coming in to understand that reality. And the moment they've diagnosed that, then to be courageous enough to say, let's put the brakes on and let's slow down, and we'll create a gap year. We're not going to obey the Department of Education that you've got to pass everybody and they're only allowed to fail once and all of that nonsense. Yeah. So we slow down the system, because that's what a leader does. A leader goes...
The system is about the child, not about the system.
Absolutely.
The system has got to serve the student, not the student serve the system.
Exactly. So, and that's the clarity within a leader, to be able to go, I'm going to make a decision now. It's contrary to whatever anybody else wants. But you know what? Our whole education process is for one thing, like any business. So when I'm coaching in businesses, I'm asking executives a question. So what's the main driver of you as an executive together with your team? And the answer is quite simple. It's written into business law. You can fire a person because they don't do it, and it's called for the good of the business. So if they do anything, say anything, and are anything that is contrary for the good of the business, it's a disciplinary action that can happen. Yeah. So we need to get to so there's an underlying mindset that needs to drive magnetize our leaders towards a future that says, if we're going into a future, we need to create students that can think, and we need to create students that can read, and we need to create students that can interpret reading and interpret and comprehend and understand comprehension. So we take VUCA, which is volatile, and we turn it into a vision. And so our vision has to be very clear as to what. So who's the end product that we're producing? Who's that person? They must be a person who are capable and have enough competency to be able to face the evolving future that's happening, and our future is closer than our past.
Right.
The past has
Right.
happened. We
Past,
can do
yeah.
nothing about that. But the future is unfolding before us, and we can reach into it. It's like the movies where you put your hand through this, it's like a mercury
yes.
thing and curtain, and your hand goes through it, and you're suddenly in a new dimension. And that's what leadership does. Leadership is inspiring people to a new dimension. It's a new reality that I create. So I don't take my to-do list of yesterday, click and paste and bring it on today, because then I've just clicked and paste the past.
Mm-hmm.
So I take the to-do list of yesterday, put it down, and I'm asking, how do I need to recreate this? And the objective of recreating what the to-do list is, or achievement list now, is I look at where do I want to be in the future,
right.
and I let the future impact
Dictate
on
your activities.
my
and your
activity.
Yeah.
And so I've got to be absolutely certain about that. I've got to be certain about what I believe. What are my principles? We've got to, somewhere along the line, a leader has to have his presence. So your presence is felt. Then your presence is felt through your voice. And I mustn't go, guys, I'm unsure. You can say maybe once.
Yeah.
And then the armor bearer is not going to believe you after that. And hopeful that when the armor bearer says, here's you saying maybe, then you better make sure that you win this war and that God's on your side. And, so that's the fun of it. It's the place where we as Christians don't go into ambiguity. We go into the evidence of things hoped for. It's faith.
Yes.
And it's what I have believed and seen in my mind, what I believe is categorically what I sense, the whispering of God in me as a leader, and I'm going, that's it, that's where I'm going. And that voice needs to be heard. I need to be courageous as a leader to stand up and be heard, stand up and be seen, and then to role model. That's my role as a leader. I need to role model being on time, being open-minded, not being negative. That's everything. So the neuroplasticity learns through example. It learns through what's the thought that's being thought, what's the emotion that's being felt, what's the action that's creating, what's the consequences, what's the response, what am I learning, what am I unlearning. So we're living in an age where the whole reality of being able to work with our VUCA world, and they've got other acronyms for it. There's RUFT, and there is so many. There's another.
It all means the same.
Yeah, all means the same. I mean, it's just got different words. Rush means
it's difficult.
It's like running away, and I'm going. So, the role of leaders is the critical role of where we need to be seen, heard, felt, experienced, but we need to come across with an inner conviction. And so, unless I as a leader have sorted out my own life, and I've sorted out the way that I'm thinking, and I've brought discipline to my own life, and I've cracked self-control in my own life, in my home life, in my personal life, I cannot expect the rest of my team to, because in our neurology, we don't have willpower. In our neurology, we have self-control, the God-given, in-breathed capacity of one of the pomegranate of the fruit of the Holy Spirit.
Right.
So we've only got one fruit. It's not 9. It's love. And then it has a pomegranate grouping of love, joy, self-control, kindness, gentleness, etc. But it all makes up love.
Right.
And but self-control is the factor that is controlled, because in Proverbs we'll read, God honors a man and a woman more, he that controls their spirit than he that takes a city. So we can brag about all the stuff that we're doing, and God is looking and going, buddy, I'm hearing what you're saying. You're taking cities and you're going into the world and doing all magic things. But how come you can't control your temper? How can't you control that? How come that's happening? So the honor of God, the smile of God, is about the fruit in our life, not about our gifts.
Right.
So Christianity has become a Christmas tree where you must have all these gifts working. Yes. Don't worry about the fruit.
Yes.
But it's the fruit that God is love. He's a fruit.
Right. Well, I think that, for those that are listening to the podcast and perhaps watching, the question would be, how do we go? Where do we go from here? Is there help out there somewhere? And I'm glad to say that, yes, there is, because we are going to...
This is the exciting part.
Yeah, we're going to take this to the next level. And the research that was done, I think the sample was over 1,300 responses, and those responses were 1 or 2 in a group. So you could probably double that number. And it's been evaluated by industrial psychologists and has come out with some very interesting findings. So we want to keep you in suspense about, firstly, what those findings are, but we don't just want to offer the findings. We want to say, what's the solution? And we're looking forward to having Dr. Bill with us again in a future episode to pick up this discussion and go forward into the way that we can provide a solution for future-focused minds in Africa. A mentoring program that would be able to allow somebody to take you by the hand or by the arm and say, come on, let's walk this journey together. And we're excited to be able to be part of that process together with Dr. Bill and his associates. So, Dr. Bill, thank you so much being with us today.
Wonderful. It's been my privilege. And I can't wait. I can't wait for mentoring me. I can't wait to be who God has created me to be, together with an amazing team that you have, and to meet some of the most amazing people that I have not yet met, like principals and teachers of your organization who are passionate about Christian education. And that's what excites me, the commonality of it, the joy of it, that we're on the same page around that, and we are producing quality young people that'll have a voice, that'll play a part, that'll be an influence, and that'll be an epicenter in the unfolding of world history into the future. So we're not just educating them to get a job and get a paycheck.
Absolutely.
We are educating them to impact a generation.
Yeah. I think a great definition of success is being everything that God created you to be.
Wow.
That's the essence of success. And Psalm 139, verse 16 tells us that God not only has a plan for your life, but he wrote it in his book, and he put it there before there was even one day that you'd lived. And in addition to that, Ephesians 2:10 tells us that we are God's workmanship, that he has created for a specific purpose. So till next time, we want to say thank you for joining us on the Accelerator. And we look forward to what God's going to do as he equips us to equip others to achieve their full potential. God bless you.
God bless you. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for joining us. If you love what you've heard, make sure to like, follow, share, and subscribe to us on iTunes, Spotify, and YouTube to get the latest scoop on everything education.